Hi guys, let's talk Jimmy Butler trade that did go down about 24 hours ago. Here to break down all the implications, and I'm still not sure really how I feel about this deal from either side. It was pretty clear that the Minnesota Timberwolves needed to get rid of Jimmy Butler. I don't think anybody would really argue that, considering just how much of a dickhead that he was being during his time there. We hear all these stories. We saw him on the bench, waving the towel with the Golden State Warriors fans. We see the situation, with him and Glenn Taylor and Tom Thibodeau agreeing to ease him through the season while they find a trade, playing him 32 minutes a night, and then Thibodeau playing him 40 minutes a night because he is a legitimate moron and has no idea about medicine, about the welfare of his players, about anything like that. And for all these guys, lots of people, oh man, but his players love playing for him. Well, I'm pretty sure that they don't really anymore. It's starting to grate on them pretty consistently, and obviously that's part of the reason why Butler wanted out of Minnesota, just getting ground into the dirt. And he had those great quotes at the end of his final game for the Timberwolves, saying that this shit has to stop. We have 14 other guys; they need to play some minutes, or to paraphrase what Butler actually said there regarding that deal. So he had to go from Minnesota. The team was a disaster. Who knows? They should be better just from a team chemistry point of view now. But in terms of how the trade actually looks for both teams, I'm not sure. I don't know why the Timberwolves wouldn't be looking to acquire draft picks. They got a second round pick in 2022, so nothing pretty much as a draft pick. They got Dario Saric, Jared Bayless, and Robert Covington as well in the deal. So a couple of solid players, starters from the Sixers, arrived there in Minnesota. And let's start with how things look in Minnesota for this season, from a fantasy point of view. So we have to remember Tom Thibodeau is the most stubborn asshole in the NBA. We know that he's going to run a rotation where his starters play 36 to 37 minutes, and he runs 4 bench guys, and they play about 12 or 13 minutes most of the time, with the exception of Derrick Rose, who gets that bump and plays the high 20s in minutes. But it's a 4 bench rotation, 9 men in total. They lose Jimmy Butler and they add 2 rotation players. So who misses out of this rotation? Now the rotation as it currently stood was Jeff Teague, it was Tyus Jones, Andrew Wiggins, Derrick Rose, Jimmy Butler, Taj Gibson, Anthony Tolliver, Karl Anthony Towns, and Gorgie Deng. Right, so we're taking Butler out of that and we're adding Covington and Saric. So someone's got to miss out. My initial thought is that it's going to be Anthony Tolliver that will be out of the rotation. You could make an argument that it'll be Gorgie Deng as well. So it's going to be one of those 2 guys, I think, that is removed from the rotation. That's the major change. So all those people that were thinking that when a trade went down, Josh Okogie was going to have all this value, I don't think anything changes there, because obviously Butler goes out, Covington comes in. That's the swap in those minutes there. And Robert Covington as a 3-and-D wing is actually pretty perfect for what this team needs. A guy that will just willingly go out there, a team that refused to shoot threes and wasn't good at it, a guy that can provide perimeter defense and can go and hit threes and shoot them, really without any concern for not getting that shot off. So that helps there. So he comes in, he replaces Butler, that's fine. But it's trying to fit Saric into this situation. That's the tricky one. So does he come in? Does he start straight away at power forward next to Karl Anthony Towns? That's what I'm not sure about. We know that Thibodeau is nothing but loyal to the players that he coached 7 years ago, because apparently he's never moved on in his life. So Taj Gibson is the incumbent starter, but prior to the last couple of games, Taj's minutes had been down. He'd been playing like 24 or 26 minutes a night, with Anthony Tolliver getting the back end of those minutes. But in true Thibodeau form, he reverted to style and started playing Taj in ridiculously huge minutes, 32 and 37 minutes. Now, last game in that loss to the Kings, he did go down to under 30 minutes, but he had been playing really, really small amounts of minutes. I think that Taj is going to I think he probably does lose his starting spot. I think that there's a chance that they take Gorgie Deng out of the lineup and they play Taj as a backup center and a backup 4, with Tolliver getting some of that backup 4 minutes as well. Now, I don't think that Taj moving to the bench moves into that Deng 13 or 14 minute role. Tolliver's the other guy who could go there, of course, and Taj is better as a center than as a 4, but Thibodeau doesn't understand modern basketball, it seems. So I think Taj is going to lose some value, averaging 28 minutes a game so far this season. I think he's going to lose a couple of minutes off that. Again, we have to incorporate Dario Saric into the mix for this team. I don't know what Saric is going to be able to provide in terms of playing time either. I don't think that he's necessarily going to be coming in and playing 34 minutes a night. Now, I'm pretty confident that Covington's going to come in. He's going to play high 30s in minutes, or mid-30s in minutes, and he's going to be solid as a rock-solid top 50 guy, probably a top 40 guy for the rest of the season. Towns, he gets a boost as well. His usage should rise. Covington is not a high usage player, so that usage will go some to Teague, some to Rose, some to Towns, some to Wiggins, but Towns should be the guy dominating that, although if Teague and Rose have their way, or Wiggins, they will still continue to freeze him out. But I think that Towns will get his confidence back. We saw that starting to come, and he'll push up to probably finish the season as a top 4 player, would be my guess. Covington is going to come in low usage, he's going to hit his threes, get his steals, get his blocks, get his rebounds as well, and he is going to be pretty solid. So overall, if you want to just skip through this show, I don't think the fantasy value for many of these guys changes significantly at all. I think Teague could get a little bit of a bump, but I think there's still also the risk that Derrick Rose actually starts the season and continues to be the starter over Teague with how he's played, and again with how Tom Thibodeau relishes having Derrick Rose on his team. So I think that could be an impact on Teague more than Butler leaving, so there's a concern there, but he could increase some usage. Wiggins the same. I think he pushes inside the top 100 now and goes back to being a 20-point per game scorer, so he gets a bit of a boost there as well. And Rose is still a 12-team must-roster guy with that chance that he is a starting point guard, or at worst he's playing that role that he's playing as backup 1 and backup 2 and playing 30 minutes a night in that scenario. As for Saric, I don't think that this changes his value considerably at all. He was getting around 30 minutes a night for the Philadelphia 76ers. Now he could come in and start for the Wolves, and you could play 32 a night in that Taj role from last season, or he could come in and play 27 a night just so that Thibodeau can get Gibson those minutes. Now, Saric had struggled this season outside the top 160 prior to the last 2 games, where he is a top 50 player over the last couple of games, averaging 18 and 8 and showing some flashes there. So I guess if he was on your wire and someone dropped him, as they rightfully should have, you could consider adding Saric and seeing what happens, but I don't think his upside is significantly high on this team with Towns, Teague, Wiggins, Rose, Covington all going to be ahead of him in the fantasy and real-life pecking order. So I don't think it changes too much for those guys. I think there is negative effect on Josh Okogie pretty clearly. Gorgie Jeng, Anthony Tolliver for you deeper league guys. All those guys are going to be losing out, because remember, we're taking 1 starter out, we're bringing 2 in, so somebody is going to lose out and minutes are going to be shuffled around, and it's not going to be Teague, it's not going to be Towns, it's not going to be Wiggins, it's not going to be Covington, it's not going to be Rose. Teague, Saric, Gibson, Jeng, Tolliver, Jones, these are the guys who are at risk with their minutes for the rest of the season here for the Minnesota Timberwolves. So that covers things off, I think, from a Timberwolves point of view, from a Philadelphia point of view in terms of real life impact on the trade. I don't really know how I don't know how I feel about it. This is a team that had the best starting lineup in the NBA last season. They took JJ Redick out of it at the start of the year. Now they lose Covington and Saric as well. Their depth is really going to be tested, because the big question is now who is going to start at power forward. I think we're going to see a pretty significant shake-up in this Sixers starting lineup. You're going to have Simmons and Embiid and Butler in there, no doubt, and that's an interesting big 3 to work with. Shooting is a considerable problem. Butler is not a great shooter. He is a ball-dominant guy. How is he going to fit there? Hopefully you can work that out. You need to put shooters around these guys. So who is going to be the other starters here? I think that they will, with this change now, I think they have to bring JJ Redick back into the starting lineup. I don't think they can have Markelle Fultz there. And it was telling last game for the Sixers. Without Butler, without Covington, without Saric, we saw Landry Shamet move into the starting lineup and JJ Redick, and they went basically with Simmons as the point guard but as the power forward as well. But it went to overtime, and those guys, Shamet and Redick, played 41 and 33 minutes, while Fultz still played 24 minutes. They couldn't get him on the court in those optimal type lineups, and I think that is going to be the case here for Fultz. Even though this team is losing 2 starters and gaining 1, I think this actually may be a negative for Fultz's overall value, because they are going to have to, I think, get Redick into that starting lineup or get Shamet into that starting lineup, and that's going to impact what Fultz can do with this team. And even when if he moves to the second unit, there's going to be staggering. He's going to be sharing the court with Butler or with Simmons, and it's going to be hard to find an opportunity for Fultz to be on the court without one of those 3 guys, Simmons, Butler, or Embiid, which I think is going to have an impact on him. Will it have an impact on Embiid? Will it have an impact on Butler? Will it have an impact on Simmons? I don't think there's going to be massive issues with either of those guys. I think Butler's assist numbers will drop somewhat. I still think he's a strong middle second round guy. I think Simmons is still a middle second round guy, and Embiid is still a first round guy. So overall, I don't think the value of these guys changes significantly. I think Simmons gets a bit of a drop in usage. Butler, about the same with his usage, with a drop in assists. One guy I think we'll see Redick back into the starting lineup, and I think Wilson Chandler, old baby neck, I think when he is fit and ready to go, he'll move into the starting lineup as well. So we'll go with Simmons, Redick, Butler, baby neck, and Embiid. We remember that at the moment, the Moose Mike Muscala is also out. He has been playing well, but I think he will remain in the bench role as the backup 4 and 5. And then that's going to open up minutes where Chandler was going to be that backup 3. So is it Furkan Korkmaz that comes in there, or is it going to be Landry Shamet who plays a larger role as well? I think it's probably going to be a mix of those two, with Shamet getting the extra bump. Jonah Bolden for deeper leagues will probably appear in more games now than what he would have before. So a boost there. Remember that DRC Zaire Smith is out for the 2018 portion of this season due to, of all bullshit things, a sesame allergy that occurred during his rehab. So yeah, he is not going to be back until January at the earliest. So he's not going to be a part of that. But you're going to have Korkmaz with a larger role. I think TJ McConnell is going to have his role increased as well. Remember, as Minnesota lost 1 starter, gained 2, this team lost 2 starters, gained 1. So there's a rotation spot available. McConnell was forced out of the rotation recently, so I think he's going to be the guy coming back in. So does this change any value for these guys? Do we add Muscala or Baby Neck in standard leagues? My answer to that is no. We saw what Chandler did as a starter last season on the Denver Nuggets, and it wasn't must roster type production on that Denver team. He was the 166th ranked player in 32 minutes last season, and now he'd have to share the court with Embiid, with Simmons, and with Jim Butler. And I don't think he's going to necessarily play 32 minutes. So he is a 16-team league sort of a player, would be my guess for Baby Neck. The same sort of thing for the Moose Mike Muscala. Obviously, we know that Markelle Fultz is not a 12-team league guy anymore, while JJ Redick can push back to the top 100. I think Landry Shamet jumps up to be a 20-team league, maybe even an 18-team league sort of a guy, and McConnell becomes a little bit more valuable as well. But overall, I don't think there's that many changes here. I think there is going to be that change to the starting lineup, or at least to the rotations, with Fultz probably, as dumb as it sounds, on a team losing 2 starters, gaining 1, that one of the starters would then lose more minutes. I think that might happen for Fultz, just with the mix of players and how this rotation is going to look. How will General Soreness fit in with this team, with Embiid and Simmons? Embiid's not going to take any shit from anybody. Butler doesn't like people in general, so it's going to be an interesting mix. It could really blow up. Apparently, Butler's intending to sign a long-term max extension with this team. So if everything comes together, Embiid, Butler, Simmons, if Fultz ever discovers anything, then they've got a huge potential upside at some point in the future. But the fit is going to be really weird. But I guess from a fantasy point of view, this is almost a best-case scenario. Butler going to Houston, I think, would have hurt him more than that. It boosts guys in Minnesota quite a bit as well. But a lot of the players, their value stays very, very similar. There's not a huge amount changing. And the guys that move into larger roles, like Baby Neck or like Muscala, they're not really sniffing the top 150 anyway. So very little changes, I think, with this deal from a fantasy point of view, with some minor adjustments. As I said, Butler, lower assist rate, Towns, higher usage, Teague, higher usage, Wiggins, more scoring, all those things change. But overall, I think it's a fairly neutral type of a deal from a fantasy point of view.